You won't see it on the news. No president will say it openly. No religion will announce it from its pulpits. No scientist will write it on their cover article, nor will it appear in the headlines of the newspapers people consume without question. But if you know how to read the signs, if you pay attention to repeated patterns, carefully timed speeches, and recycled symbols at international summits, then you'll know that something is brewing. Something silent, meticulous, but imminent. And that something has a date carved into the symbolic architecture of power. 2030. It's not just another number. It's a ceremonial key, a ritual coordinate, a number echoed endlessly in official documents, business forums, educational agendas, and multilateral agreements. 2030 is not an aspiration. It's a deadline, a finish line that will mark the end of one cycle and the beginning of something entirely different. A point of no return in human history, a threshold not designed for debate, but to be crossed blindly by millions of people who won't even realize they've done so. While everyone stares at their screens, waiting for the next viral trend, the true architects of the new world are carving destiny with invisible tools. Soft laws, invisible technologies, fabricated narratives. And when that marked day arrives not by accident, but by design, nothing from before will survive. Not your money, your privacy, or your idea of freedom. Because what's coming is a total reconfiguration of the human being and their environment, wrapped in the promise of a sustainable, technologically brilliant future, one that hides a cage so polished that no one will see the bars until it's too late. This is not a prediction. It's not a theory. It's a convergence. A network of symbols, political decisions, public rituals, closed-room agreements, and hidden technologies all pointing to a single moment in human history. A change of era, a reset, a reprogramming of everything it means to be human. It's the convergence of visible and invisible forces, of ancient institutions and technological powers, of ideologies dissolving into artificially manufactured consensus. It's not just about politics or economics. It's about redesigning existence itself, replacing biology with data, consciousness with software, humanity with efficiency. And the key, the secret word that encompasses it all, is this transition. Because for something new to be born, the old must die. And that old is us. Our system, our culture, our way of thinking, feeling, acting. Our freedom understood as individuality. Our soul unconnected to the digital grid. Everything that was once spontaneous and chaotic will be ordered and predictable. Everything that was human will be redefined under the logic of control. The elites call it Agenda 2030. You believe it's a sustainable development plan. But if you analyze its language, its dates, its recurring concepts, and global implementation, you'll see it's not a plan. It's a protocol. A roadmap to a new order. A total redesign of the world's architecture disguised as philanthropy. An order that needs no soldiers or weapons because it will have your digital consent, your eye scan, your facial recognition, your voice modeled by a neural network. An order so elegant and clean it will look like freedom, so comfortable you won't want to leave it, so perfect that any dissent will be deemed insanity. The perfect totalitarianism doesn't impose itself by force. It seduces with efficiency, numbs with comfort, and convinces you that it was your choice all along. The first sign was 2020. It wasn't just a pandemic, it was a global transition ritual. A planetary stage production where fear became the most powerful tool of control. Borders were closed, basic freedoms restricted, massive monitoring systems installed. Quarantines, health passports, total traceability, algorithmic censorship. What seemed like science fiction decades ago materialized within weeks. It was a global experiment. More than that, it was a declaration of power. A demonstration that collective will can be redirected with surgical precision if fear is administered in the right dose. And it worked. People accepted losing their rights in exchange for a promise of safety. Panic was the pretext. Fear was the fuel. And obedience became the new creed of civilization. That was the prelude. The real act is about to begin. What we witnessed wasn't the climax, but the prologue. Between 2020 and 2030, there are exactly 10 years. 10, the number of totality of the complete system in occult numerology. Not just a figure, but a cycle. The ancient Pythagoreans considered it the perfect number, the tetractys, a sacred symbol representing the harmony of the universe. 1 stood for unity, 2 for duality, 3 for harmony, 4 for matter. 10, the sum of all, marked the return to origin. A new creation, a complete reconfiguration. Coincidence? The elites do nothing by accident. Everything is ritualized. Everything is encoded. Each decade is an initiation chamber. Every event, a step on the staircase to an invisible architecture. Every crisis, a door designed to open only with the key of obedience. And the decade from 2020 to 2030 will be no exception. It will be the final phase of the most ambitious social laboratory in modern history. Look at the World Economic Forum, the World Bank, the big philanthropic foundations. They all speak of 2030 as a milestone. But no one tells you what comes after. Because after 2030, there is no phase 2. There is a different system. One where cash will have vanished not from obsolescence, but by design. Where every transaction will be logged in real time, every movement tracked, and every dissenting thought anticipated by a pre-coded behavioral pattern. Your movements will be monitored by artificial intelligence not as security helpers, but as the architects of order. Identity will no longer be a private possession but a node on the network. A biometric identity linked to a central cloud, a digital avatar more real than your physical body. A world where your behavioral history becomes your new currency, where every decision generates a score, an algorithmic reputation that determines if you can travel, access, speak, work, heal, reproduce. And who decides what counts as good behavior? The answer, an algorithm trained by them. But these algorithms are not neutral. They are not pure mathematics. They are ideological filters disguised as efficiency. And they do not understand ethics, they optimize. They do not recognize consciousness, they detect patterns. They do not see a soul, they scan variables. Meanwhile, a new spirituality is being promoted. Not institutional religion, but a synthetic mix of decontextualized mindfulness, compassionate AI, and programmed planetary unity. A silicon spirituality. A God without a face, a programmed God. A God that doesn't speak in parables, but in parameters. Who doesn't demand conversion, but updates. Faith will be replaced by code. Rituals by interfaces. Confession by data. Prayer by feedback. But this is not new. It was foretold. Ancient apocryphal texts, hidden for centuries, spoke of an age where man would worship living images, where fire from heaven would be replaced by artificial light, where the word would be supplanted by the digital voice, where temples would be emptied and replaced by virtual clouds of total connection, where divine presence would be replaced by the system's omnipresence. The Book of Enoch tells of a time when the Watcher's fallen angels descended into the world of men and taught them secrets reserved only for the divine. They gave knowledge of alchemy, weapon-making, climate manipulation, and star reading. They introduced man to the mysteries of matter, fire, and the heavens. It marked the beginning of a deep corruption that disrupted the world's balance. That transgression, according to the account, provoked the Great Flood as divine punishment. And yet today we repeat the story, not in the form of rebellious angels, but through the glowing faces of scientists, engineers, and tech moguls who defy the limits of biology, alter DNA, control the skies with geoengineering, and connect us to a network that never sleeps. Aren't we once again crossing the threshold of sacred knowledge? Aren't we rebuilding the Tower of Babel, only this time with binary code instead of bricks? Aren't we tempting the same abyss that once devoured us? The revelation of John speaks of the beast, an entity that will control the global economy and impose a mark without which no one can buy or sell. Some interpret it as metaphor. But today, in a world marching toward central bank digital currencies, where every transaction is traceable, every movement filtered, every thought punished by moral algorithms, does that still sound like just an allegory? The mark is no longer a mystical symbol. It's a QR code, a digital signature, an authorized wallet. It is the filter between existence and systemic erasure. And it won't be enforced with violence, it will only require that you lack access. And without access, you don't exist. But the most disturbing sign isn't written on ancient scrolls or embedded in cryptocurrency. It's in the heavens. Just as future engineers consult data matrices, ancient sages watched the skies. The heavens were the God's book, and each alignment, a message. In 2020, the great conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn marked the end of an Earth cycle and the beginning of a new air cycle, according to esoteric astrology. A vibrational transition, a frequency shift. In 2024 and 2025, 2 solar eclipses will cross the United States, forming a perfect cross on its geography. Ancient cultures would read this as a sign of judgment. And in 2030, a rare conjunction is coming, along with planetary alignments not seen since the Middle Ages. The heavens speak, but only those who still look upward can hear. The ancients believed the stars were messengers, that their dance determined the fate of kings and peoples. When the heavens fell into disorder, it was because Earth had already fractured. Today, the heavens are screaming and no one listens. We've forgotten how to read. We've lost our sensitivity to symbols, but those in power haven't. They still watch. They still understand. And so they prepare. They build underground bunkers, buy land far from the sea, create smart cities detached from chaos. They run global simulations of fictitious pandemics, energy collapses, massive cyber attacks. Not out of paranoia, because they know what's coming, because they are actively provoking it. Collapse will be the master key, and the solution is already written. All that remains is your acceptance, your signature, your fingerprint, your scan, your silence. And are you ready? Not for the end of the world, but for the end of the world, for the end of spontaneity, of mystery, of the free soul, for the beginning of the programmed era. Because the apocalypse won't be a bomb. It will be a systematic silence, a digital signature, a click of consent, a promise of order hiding an elegant prison, a cage built of comfort, efficiency, and apparent security, a disguised utopia built atop the remains of everything that was once human. And when 2030 comes, if you are not awake, it will be too late. The apocalypse already has a date, and the countdown has begun.